All right. Now, to proceed to the next part, actually the next two parts, what we need to do is we're going to be constructing our frequency distribution table and arranging all of the lower class boundaries as a comma separated list and the upper class boundaries as a comma separated list. Now, that would be a fairly time consuming process to do it by hand, but I'm going to show you how you can use the spreadsheet software to pretty much do everything for you, okay, with a minimum of effort. So this will be really cool. Um, let's go back to the, uh, the project guide. And this is where, if you wanted to do it by hand, of course, you are welcome to. Um, so here, random variable one for me was the speed random variable. And this is going to be for histogram one. So the first histogram was for the lower number of classes with the width for each class. And this is our frequency distribution table. So class number, lower bound, upper bound, midpoint, and frequency. So we're going to recreate this table in Microsoft Excel, in the spreadsheet software. And we'll end up duplicating that work for the second histogram. So histogram 2 is also with the first random variable, with my speed random variable, but now it'll be made with a higher number of classes with the respective width for each one of those classes. And again, with the same columns here. All right. So that's what we're doing here on the worksheet. Let me go back up to the flow chart. So here we finished step 3 by calculating the number of classes and how wide each one should be, calculating the number of classes and how wide each one should be. And now we're constructing a frequency distribution table for each set of classes and widths. Okay, so this is going to be with K low and W low. And then the second frequency distribution table will be for K high and W high. And then that'll lead us to creating these two separate histograms. All right. So maybe with this picture in mind, let's go to our spreadsheet. And this is where we left off before. So let's maybe start here in column F, the top of column F. And this is where we're going to put histogram 1. All right. And I'll just go ahead and make that bold just because I want to. All right, now we've got K low and W low and our starting point. And so K low was 8 and W low was 19. And my starting point was 0. Yours could be different. All right. Now, right here is where we're going to put our frequency distribution table. And notice here, I'm not really caring that the text flows over into the next cell because I'm not putting something here in cell G5. I'm not going to put something here. So I don't have to worry about maybe accidentally clicking that text. Okay, I'm just using this as a label. Okay, so now we need to put the different column headings for the frequency distribution table. So we've got class number, and then we've got lower bound, spell right, lower bound, and the lower bound, let's see here. I think if I hold the alternate key down and then hit enter, that will allow me to put in a second row in a cell. So let's see here. Let's see here. Class 1 will be like that. And everything from class 2 and below, because this is Microsoft Excel, will look like that. And if I hit enter. Okay. Let me kind of explain to you what I just did. So I wanted to be able to put these things down below this word lower bound, but I didn't want to type them into these rows here. All right. So what happens is normally, like if you're in a word processor like this, so if you're in word processing software and you want to type something next in the next line below, you just hit enter and away you go. Okay. But if you try and do that in spreadsheet software, so I did upper bound, and let's say I wanted to, put some more stuff below it. And if I were to hit enter, it moves me down to the next cell. And I want to keep this cell clear because I'm going to do calculations here, but I want to add something below it. So in order to do that is instead of just hitting the enter key by itself, if I hold down the alternate key and then hit enter, now it's going to allow me to type the next line below. I'll hit alternate key and enter. And I can do something like that. All right. And let's see here. Then the next one, this is going to be midpoint. And I'm going to do the same thing, hold down the alternate key, hit enter. And the midpoint is found by taking the lower bound and adding the upper bound to it, and then dividing by 2. There we go. And in this column, we're going to have frequency. And I'm just going to put frequency F like that. And if I don't like the way it's chopping it off, I can always just make this column a little wider. And if I want to make this look a little prettier, I can select these by left clicking the mouse button, holding it down, and then dragging over these other cells. And then I can make that text maybe kind of go to the top and center like that. There we go. All right. All right, so histogram 1 has to have 8 classes. So down here, down the left-hand side is where we put the number of each class. Now I could go do it this way and just keep typing in each class and hitting enter. And let me justify those. All right, that's one way to do it. But let me show you a shortcut, and this will come into play later. If you have a repeating pattern, like I've got 1, 2, 3, Microsoft Excel is smart enough that it'll notice that each of these numbers are separated by 1. And notice down here in the lower right-hand corner, if I move the cursor to that little green square in the lower right-hand corner, the cursor changes from this open cross to a closed cross. If I left click and hold the mouse button and drag down, I can drag down to where it says 8, and it'll fill in the rest of the values with this initial pattern. So that saves me from having to type everything. Okay. And so we're going to use that same property here next. Okay. So now the lower bound of the first class. Let's go back to the worksheet. Okay, I don't have it here. So let's go up to the flowchart. And so here you can see the lower bound of the first class is your starting point. Okay, is your starting point. And then the upper bound for the first class is the starting point plus the width. So either have that in front of you, write it down, or remember it. Okay, so let's go back to the spreadsheet. And so here, the lower bound of the first class is the starting point. So our starting point is 0. So I'm going to type in a 0. And yeah, okay, so it'll be 0. Then the upper bound, now what we're going to do is we're going to do this a little differently. Now I could just go, it's going to be 0 plus the width, which is 0 plus 19. I could just type in 19. That would be fine. But again, I want to use the power of a spreadsheet to make my life easier. So instead of typing in 19, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put equals, and I'm going to say it's equal to this cell, which is the lower bound. Now I'm going to put plus 19, like that, and hit enter. Gives me the same result, but there's a method to my madness, so please do it that way. Again, now if we click on this cell, we can see that it's G7, so G7 plus 19. All right, there we go. And the lower bound of the second class, I'm going to go back to the guide. So here's class 2. The lower bound for class 2 is the starting point plus the width. Okay, it's the same as what we did here for the upper bound of class 1. So the lower bound of class 2 is the starting point plus the width. So I'm going to program this as well. So it's equal to the starting point plus 19. Now, if I hit enter, it's just going to put 19 there. All right, but what would we do if we were doing this by hand? Well, we would take this and we would add 19. We would take this number and add 19, add 19, add 19, add 19. We would just do that repeated calculation over and over and over again. But watch what happens when we have this cell selected. So the cell that I have selected is the lower bound of class 2. And notice it has that little control square in the lower right-hand corner, and how the cursor changes to a closed X, a closed cross. If I left click, hold, and drag down, and now let go, look at that. It just added 19 all the way down. We didn't have to do it manually. And look at the formula. So we know what this formula is. It's the previous cell plus 19. Look what happens if we select the next one. It's the previous cell plus 19. If we click on the next cell, it's the previous cell plus 19. So what the spreadsheet software did is it didn't copy the numbers, it copied the formula. It noticed that the formula was repeating, and it allowed us to repeat that formula all the way down. Kind of the same way that we were able to, use this control point to fill these values in. We can also use it to copy formulas down. And guess what? We can do it over here too. So now that we've got a formula for this and we copy it down, look at that. It just does it for us. Now, had I not put in a formula, okay, had I not done this, if I had just put 19 here, and then I tried to drag this down, look what it does. It just thinks, oh, I want the rest of the values to be 19 too, because there's no formula here, right? But instead, if I put a formula of this cell plus 19, and then I drag this down, it just copies that formula all the way down. So notice as I click on these cells, it's taking the cell to the left and adding 19. Okay. So it really quickly calculated all of the lower bounds and all of the upper bounds. And we can do that with the midpoint. So the midpoint is going to be equal to, now we have to put parentheses here, and I'll explain why in a minute. It's going to be the lower bound plus the upper bound, and then divided by 2. So the upper bound plus, I'm sorry, did I just say upper bound? The lower bound plus the upper bound, right parentheses, divided by 2. Now, the reason why I put parentheses around this sum is because we have to calculate the sum before we divide by 2, or we'll get the wrong answer. So the way to tell the spreadsheet software to do the sum first is by putting parentheses around it, because now you're using order of operations. Order of operations says that you have to do what's in the parentheses first before you do any multiplication or division. So that's why I had to use the parentheses as a tool to control the way that the spreadsheet software would add and multiply and divide. So now I'll hit enter. And 9.5, 9.5 is the midpoint between 0 and 19. So now I can do is I can select this, and if I want to copy this formula all the way down, I can just put the cursor on that square in the lower right-hand corner, left click and hold the mouse button, drag it down and let go. Right? Now, another trick you can do is that instead of holding the mouse button and dragging down like this, instead, if the formula that you're trying to use or you're trying to copy down is using the cell next to it, you can double click it and it'll go down and it'll stop at the last entry in the column next to it. Okay, so that's just a little trick there. All right, so we've really very easily and very quickly created the lower bound and upper bound and the midpoint. Now we just have to get the frequency. Now the frequency we could get, we could count it manually ourselves. Okay, so I could look and see how many datums I have between 0 and 19. And the number of datums I have between 0 and 19, I can see over here on the left would be 3. I could also look at the My Open Math problem. If I scroll up to the top, how many datums do I have between 0 and 19? I've got 1, 2, 3. I've got those 3, right? But again, I want to teach you how to use spreadsheet software to make your life easier. So that would be a simple thing to count, right? I could do that. But then how many are between 19 and 38? Well, 19 would be just before 20 and after 17. So it'd be this one. And I need to go down to 28 or 38. Sorry, I'll just have to keep going down. And now I have to stop and then I have to count, which I could do. Right, but let's use the software to do it for us. So there's another function. So let's put equals and start typing in the word frequency. And the spreadsheet software has a frequency function. So I'm going to double click that. And so this will calculate how often values occur within a range of values and then returns a vertical array of numbers having one more element than bins. Okay. So I'll kind of explain what that means. So let me hit frequency here. All right, now it wants 2 inputs. So it wants our data as one input and then a comma. The comma separates our first input from our second. All right, so our data is going to be everything in this first column. So I could use the same trick that I did before. I could left click on the first cell. I could scroll down to the last one. Hold down the shift key, hold it down, and left click again. We can see that change up here in the formula bar. Right. So our data is from A1 colon to A241. And then I can scroll back up. And now that is my first input. Now watch what happens when I hit a comma. It'll go from highlighting this first argument, this first input, to now highlighting the second. So now, what is our second input? What it's asking for here is it wants our list of upper bounds. So I'm going to click and drag these ones. I think I did that right. And so now I can hit right parentheses, hit enter, and look at that. Remember, I said that the frequency in the first class was 3. So it went ahead and counted the number of datums in the second class is 39. The number of datums in the third class is 93. The next one's 82. The next one's 20, 2, 1, and 1. And this 0 means that there weren't any datums greater than the upper bound of our last class. There aren't any extra datums that aren't included in the histogram. So if you see a 0 here, that's perfect. That's what you want. If you have anything other than 0, then you didn't do something right here. All right. Okay. So there's our frequency. Now, let me switch back over to the MyOpenMath problem. So the MyOpenMath problem wants these numbers listed out and separated by commas. Okay. So here we got these numbers vertically. If we go over to the MyOpenMath problem, it wants us to list them out. Now I could sit here and do this. Put them all in there, separating them by commas manually. All right. But I'm going to teach you a better way. So again, this is going to use a function. So let me see, let me go to this cell and I'm going to type in use, I think it's going to be, I don't remember, it's called join function. It might have a different name. Okay, but we're going to have our list of lower bounds. Down below, we're going to have our list of upper bounds. No, don't correct my spelling. I meant that to be a capital B. And then here, I'm going to have my list of frequencies. That. All right. Okay. So this cell is going to have this list of numbers separated by commas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit equals. And let's see if I start typing in join. There we go. We're going to use text join. So we're going to use this function. So double click that. Now the delimiter is the character that we're going to use to separate each of these numbers. And so the character we want to use to separate each of these numbers is going to be a comma. So in order to put that in so that it will understand it, is we're going to put parentheses, comma, parentheses. So the character between the parentheses is going to be the delimiter. It'll be the letter, the character that goes in between each number. All right. And so that's our first input. Our second input is going to be our list of numbers. So in order to put in the second input, I need to put in a comma. And let's see here, true and false. Hit comma one more time. Now it wants our list of numbers. So now I'm going to left click and hold, drag on our lower bound, hit the right parentheses, and hit enter. And voila. It took each of these numbers and it separated them by our delimiter. It separated them by that comma that we put in quotes. So let's do the same thing again with upper bound. So again, equals, and let me change this to be, shoot. Go back here. This would be, we're using the text join function. We'll put that in there just as a reminder. Okay, so we'll put equals, text join, double click, our delimiter. We're going to put parentheses, comma, parentheses. And then that's our first input. Our second input is whether to ignore empty cells or include empty cells. We're not going to worry about that. So we'll just hit comma again. And now it wants our range of values. So this function actually takes 3 inputs. Okay. The third input is to put in the range of numbers that we want to make a list out of, separated by the delimiter. So now I'll put right parentheses, enter, and there's our list. And now we need a list of frequencies. So again, equals, I'm just gonna type in join, want to use text join, quotes, comma, quotes, comma, comma. And now list of frequencies, do not include that last 0. Okay, that last 0 is outside our table. Okay, so don't include that one. Right parentheses, enter. Okay, so now we can just take this list of lower bounds. This is with histogram 1, and I'm going to copy it. So we'll do copy, come over to My Open Math, right click, paste. Come down here, go back to the spreadsheet. Now it wants the list of upper bounds. I'll click here, right click, copy. Go to My Open Math, right click, paste. All right. Now we need to recreate the same thing, but with histogram 2. Okay, because it needs the list of lower bounds and the list of upper bounds here. All right, so let's go back to the spreadsheet. And we're going to put that down below. So what I'm going to do is, to save myself some time, is I'm going to select these cells. So from where it says histogram 1 over to frequency, and I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to come right down here, and I'm going to right click and let's see here. I think I can just do, can I just do this paste? Yeah, that looks good. All right, and I hit escape, by the way. I hit escape to stop it from selecting that. Except now I need to change a little bit. So this is not histogram 1. This is histogram 2. This is no longer K low. This is K high. And that was 16. And this is not W low. This is W high. And that is 10. That starting point of 0. All right, class number. So now we're going to have 16 classes. So 1, 2, 3. And remember, we can take these first 3, left click and hold the mouse button, and drag down all the way to 16. Done. And the lower bound is our starting point. The lower bound of class 1 is our starting point. The upper bound, that's equal to our starting point plus the width, which is 10. And then the lower bound for our second class, that is equal to our starting point plus 10, like that. And now that we've got that there, we can now take and left click and hold the mouse button on this lower right-hand corner control point. So left click and hold, drag down. There's all our lower bounds. You can come here, put our cursor over the control point in the lower right-hand corner of the cell, left click and hold the mouse button, drag it down, let go. Midpoint is equal to left parentheses, lower bound plus upper bound, right parentheses, divided by 2, enter. Take that, and I can double click. There they go. And that gives me all the midpoints. Frequency, I can put equals, start typing in frequency. I mean, look how quickly we're filling this in, right? Okay, so now it wants the data array. Now I selected it last time, but I remember correctly. It goes from A1 colon to A241, comma. Now for the bins array, for my second input, it wants the list of upper bounds. So I'll do that. And okay, parentheses, look at that. And this last 0, which is outside of our table, this tells us that there are no datums outside of our histogram. Our histogram is going to include all of the datums in our data set and our random variable. Okay. So, wow, yeah. So that just did all the hard work for us. But we had to know what to do, right? We had to know what to tell it, what to do. Okay, so now we need to create lists. So let me take these cells and I'll do copy. Come over here and paste. And let me do equals join. The delimiter is parentheses, or no, I'm sorry, quotes, comma, quote, comma, and we don't have to worry about this. You could tell it to ignore empty cells. If you click that, it's going to put true, but that doesn't matter. Then we'll hit comma again. And now this is where we get to put in our list of lower bounds. So just select all those, right parentheses. There's our list of lower bounds. Equals text join, our delimiter, quote, comma, quote. And then I'll just hit comma, comma, oops. And now I'll put in the list of upper bounds. And list of frequencies, so equals, just type join, text join, quote, comma, quote. Yeah, comma once, comma a second time. That lets us put in our values. And when I want to put in the list of frequencies, remember, don't select this last 0. This is the 0 that's outside of your table. We do not want to include that in our list of frequencies. Right parentheses. You always have to close off a function with a parentheses, a right parentheses, enter, and there's our list. So now we'll take this list of lower bounds. I'm going to copy that, go back to my open math, paste it here under question 11. Now I'm going to come over here to question 12. Click here, right click, choose copy, go back to my open math, right click and choose paste. And you see how that was very simple, right? A lot less work than just typing that in. And if you type it in, you're going to make a mistake, right? You're going to type something in wrong. So you do it this way, you not only learn, how to use spreadsheet software, but you do so in a way that's going to minimize mistakes and keep all the hair in your head, okay? All right, so now we've got our list of lower bounds and upper bounds for both histogram 1 and for histogram 2. We can now click submit and see if they're correct. Scroll down. Part 6, the list of lower bounds was correct. The list of upper bounds were correct. The list of lower bounds for histogram 2 were correct. The list of upper bounds for histogram 2 were correct. So we're good. So now it lets us move on to part 7. And part 7 is to put in the list of frequencies, right? So enter the comma-separated list of frequencies associated with histogram 1. And so we already calculated that. So let's go back to the spreadsheet. Under histogram 1, here's the list of frequencies right here. So we're going to hit copy, go back to my open math, right click and choose paste. Then we need the list of frequencies for histogram 2, which we did already. Scroll down. List of frequencies right here. That's our list of frequencies in comma separated format. We will right click, choose copy, go back to my open math, right click and choose paste. And then hit submit. And if we've put in, if the frequency count is absolutely correct, we should be rewarded with these green check marks. So these are correct. And now that lets us move on to part 8. Now part 8 is you have nothing to do. Part 8 is just showing the results of all of your work. So what we're looking at is both the frequency table, which you see here, and histogram number 1, which you see right here. And this is, you did this in Microsoft Excel. You had a starting point of 0, right? Here's the starting point. See it down here. The starting point is also the lower bound of the first class. And you had 8 classes, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bars. Each were 19 wide, right? From 0 to 19, 19 to 38. Down here on your histogram, 0 to 19, 19 to 38, and so on. So this is what your histogram 1 should look like. Down below, you want to label your axes. So the horizontal axis is the label for the random variable. So for me, that was speed in miles per hour. And the vertical axis is going to be in frequency. Okay, that's this column here, frequency column. All right. You can see, like the first class had a frequency of 3. So the first class here has a frequency of 3. That's why it's so short. The second class had a frequency of 39, which was almost 40. So here's the second class, or the second bar, and it's a frequency of 39, just under 40. You see that? So you can see how each of these class numbers and frequencies correlate to each one of these bars. And so that's histogram 1. And if you scroll down, this is histogram 2. So both the frequency table, which you see here, and histogram 2, which you see here. All right, so again, there's no work to do on this last part. This is just showing you the results of your work. All right, same starting point, but with 16 classes. All right, so we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 bars. Now, I mean, you'll notice some are missing, but that's because they had frequencies of 0. All right. And the whole point is I want you to make 2 histograms of the same random variable because they'll look different. You'll see that this histogram looks different from that one. Okay. And it's up to you which of the 2 you use. And I talked a little bit about, how you can decide which of the 2 to use. I talked about that in class. So right now you're done with this MyOpenMath problem for random variable 1 for you. So it says congratulations. You've now completed your histogram visualization of your data. So this online problem guided you through the process, providing you feedback. Use this problem to compare with your results with your calculator, Google Sheets, or Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. Your report should include the formulas, calculations, and step-by-step procedures you created to complete this online problem. You must also create your own graphs. So you cannot use these pictures. Okay, I know you could do a screenshot, copy and paste into your report, but you're making these in Microsoft Excel yourself. You just want to take what you make in Microsoft Excel and compare it to this picture. Okay, they should look very similar, nearly identical. So you cannot copy the graphs in this online problem. The graphs are provided so you can use them as a guide. All right. And so now what we've done is we've finished. We're down here at step 5. We've created 2 histograms, histogram 1 and histogram 2, for one random variable. And so now we would just have to repeat that same process. So here's random variable 1, histograms 1 and 2. There's the work that we just did. Here's the frequency distribution table for histogram 1. Here's the frequency distribution table for histogram 2 for the same random variable. Now you want to go through the same process with your second random variable. Create 2 more histograms. That'll be histogram 3 and histogram 4, following the same process I just went through. Okay, so you can rewatch this video and go through it with your second random variable. And so for me, instead of speed, that would maybe be the height. The height of the roller coaster, and I think that was in feet. Okay, and I spelled that wrong. There we go. So then you would just continue and do the same process. Okay. Let me see. So I showed that, and let me come back to the canvas here. So, you're watching one of the videos up here in this link. I just completed the MyOpenMath question for random variable 1. Now you're going to click this one and do random variable 2. So it'll be blank and you'll fill it in just like we just did for the random variable 1. Okay, I'll stop talking. Let me know if you have any questions.